So in the lead up to No Time to Die, there was a lot of talk about, do you think this movie will redeem Spectre and make Quantum of Solace better? Because the one thing you can say about Daniel Craig's run as James Bond is the fact that it is wildly inconsistent. You've got Casino Royale, which is one of the best James Bond movies of all time. Then you have Quantum of Solace, which is not one of the best James Bond movies of all time, even compared to some of the cheesiest and most indulgent Roger Moore films. It's like really, really lacking in a lot. But then you've got Skyfall, which is an amazing, amazing movie, which is followed by Spectre, which was such a wasted opportunity. And it would have been so sad if that had been Daniel Craig's final James Bond film, because Spectre, I felt terrible. I took one of my friends to go and see their first James Bond movie in the theatre, and it was Spectre, and I don't think they've ever watched another James Bond movie since, because it was really, really bad. Except it did get better thanks to No Time to Die. And part of that was the way that Cary Fukunaga very effectively ended some character arcs that perhaps we hadn't expected to have close up quite so neatly and quite so satisfyingly. And one of them was Blofeld's character arc, because one way or another, No Time to Die does give Blofeld an arc, a conclusion to a story arc. We got introduced to him in Spectre, and it was really, really unsatisfying, underwhelming. Christoph Waltz is a fantastic actor. He was the perfect choice to play Blofeld, and they completely wasted the opportunity. But to a certain extent, in No Time to Die, I think they did as much as they could to correct that. So Blofeld has a story arc, and I'm not going to say it's a good story arc. I'm not going to say it's a satisfying story arc. In fact, if you think of it contextually against everything we know about James Bond, it's really, really, really sad and pathetic and unsatisfying. But now it is at least a full story arc. So what we have is Franz Oberhauser, this kid, gets brought up by his dad, and he gets super butthurt because his dad prefers James Bond, which, if you actually look at what a whiny little brat Blofeld is in these movies, you can kind of understand. Yeah, maybe his dad preferred James Bond because his actual son was a bit of a dick. But apparently, I get the impression that Blofeld was so upset by this that he spent the rest of his life creating Spectre, the Special Executive for Counter-Terrorism, Revenge and Extortion, purely so he could mess with James Bond. And that's really how Spectre came across to me. And then, of course, he gets foiled in his plan, he loses his eye, he gets thrown away in Belmarsh prison. But at the very end of Blofeld's life, when he has that final scene with James Bond, he reveals that, when he planted that bomb in Vesper's tomb and blown James Bond up and nearly had him killed and implanted that seed of doubt about Madeleine. Like, he made James Bond believe that Madeleine had betrayed him. And in some ways, Blofeld won, because he did steal 5 years of James Bond and Madeleine's life that they could have had happily together. He stole from James Bond being a father to Mathilde for those 5 years. And as a dad myself, I know, God, that would be horrific. So it is a complete travesty compared to the vision that Ian Fleming had for the character of Blofeld, who was like this ultimate mastermind, this Moriarty type figure. Instead, he's just a pissed off little brat who somehow managed to create this amazing terrorist organization that was all over the world, but it was all purely just to be snotty and try and mess with James Bond's life, to which he succeeded. And his death at James Bond's hand seemed like a reasonable conclusion to that. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have to think, yeah, it's not a satisfying story arc, it's not a satisfying character arc. The whole use of Blofeld in Spectre was just such a wasted opportunity. And in some ways, I think it was repeating the mistake they'd made in Star Trek Into Darkness, where they'd had Benedict Cumberbatch being revealed to be Khan. It's like, you can't take such an iconic character from a movie franchise and then mess around with him in such an unsatisfactory way. But I do think Cary Fukunaga did the best job he could to try and redeem Blofeld. And to a certain extent, I feel a bit of satisfaction of seeing that Blofeld had this arc that concluded, and one way or another, it seems so ridiculous. You know, the literary figure of Blofeld and the early representations of Blofeld were a man who would steal nuclear warheads and hold the world ransom, or he would create this virus that could cause infertility in whole strains of livestock or plants. You know, these were big, world-domineering plans, and instead, Christoph Waltz and his iteration of Blofeld was just, you know, I'm just going to make Bond really miserable for 5 years. But he did it. He succeeded. And I think that's really the sad thing. It's like, at the end of the day, Blofeld won. Blofeld got what he wanted, which was to steal 5 years of James Bond's life. And ultimately, he led James Bond down the path that would see him sacrifice himself at the end of the movie. So, yeah, it's a story arc. Not good story arc, but it's a story arc. So, there we go. Cary Fukunaga, you were handed a sow's ear and you made a silk purse out of it, so good job.